All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into some seriously dark folklore. This is a story about grief, about revenge, and about a power that once you let it out of the box, well, it spirals into pure terror.
So let's just jump right into the heart of it with the horrifying advice that kicks this whole thing off. Imagine this, a rabbi telling a desperate village chief he has to do this. I mean, with a solution this monstrous, you just know it's not going to end well.
Okay, so our story starts where a lot of tragedies do, right? With desperation. We have this powerful guy, a village chief, who suddenly finds everything he cares about. His power, his family line, threatened by something he can't fight. A bizarre sickness that's just eating away at his only son.
Now this chief, he wasn't a good guy. He was known for being corrupt, for pocketing government aid, for making life miserable for the Christian families in his village. But none of that power meant a thing when he was watching his heir just waste away. The kid was covered in these awful weeping sores, and no doctor, no healer could figure it out. His son was dying, and this guy was getting ready to do anything to stop it.
And this is the moment, where desperation just sours into pure calculated evil. The chief decides to target the very people he's already been oppressing. The ritual calls for a widow's only son, and he knows exactly where to find one. But to get to the boy, he taps into another ugly human trait, greed. He actually bribes the child's own aunt to betray her own flesh and blood.
So, they do it. The terrible ritual happens on the night of a lunar eclipse, just like the rabbi said. And it was all for nothing. The chief's son doesn't get better. In fact, he gets way, way worse. And then to top it all off, the aunt, the one who betrayed the boy, she feels cheated because she didn't get the reward she was promised. So full of guilt and spite, she goes and confesses the whole horrible story to her sister, the murdered boy's mom.
So now, the truth is out. And this is where the story really takes a turn. The mother, completely destroyed by grief, betrayed by her own sister, she isn't looking for justice from the authorities. Nope, she's turning to a forbidden, dark power. She wants pure, raw revenge.
And see, here's the thing. This wasn't just any grieving mother. Her family had this heirloom, a dangerous book of ancient magic. It had been kept locked away for generations. But now, with her entire world burned to the ground, she was more than ready to open it up and let out whatever darkness was inside.
She flips through this ancient book, looking for the fastest, most direct way to get her revenge. And she finds it. Instructions on how to create a golem. Now, if you're not familiar, a golem in folklore is basically a creature made from something like clay or mud. It's brought to life by a magic ritual, and it's completely bound to do whatever its master wants. It's not a person, it's a tool, an extension of its creator's will. And just look at how it's made. It's so simple, it's almost scary. There are no big, elaborate ceremonies, no weird ingredients. It's just clay, a piece of paper, and a spell. A simple recipe to cook up a living weapon that runs on a mother's fury.
And this is the fatal turning point of the whole story. In her grief, in her rush to get this done in the middle of the night, she makes one tiny mistake. She adds too much water to the clay. She even notices the little doll seems to be weeping water, but she doesn't have any more clay and she's not about to wait. So she finishes the ritual having no idea that this one little flaw just corrupted the entire spell and basically sealed the fate of everyone in that village.
So a few weeks go by and nothing happens. The mother starts to think, well, I guess the magic didn't work. But oh, it worked. The power she called on was just building up steam. The golem, the living embodiment of all her pain and all her rage, was just about to clock in for its first day of work. Then one night, she hears something in her storeroom. She thinks it's a rat, but when she goes to check, she finds a beautiful little boy, maybe 6 years old. And he looks so much like her son who was killed. He just looks at her and says, "Mother," and her heart just breaks all over again. The only thing that's off, the only sign that this isn't real, is that water is constantly dripping from its skin, the mark of her fatal mistake.
The golem didn't need a to-do list. It just knew her rage deep down, and the revenge started the very next day. First, the chief's sick son is found literally torn to pieces. Then his wife, his brother, his sister, one by one. Then it goes after all his accomplices. But the thing is, its hunger for violence just couldn't be satisfied. It didn't stop with the people who were guilty. The rampage started spreading to the whole village, killing anyone in its path.
So the chief, with his family gone and living in absolute terror, runs back to the rabbi, and the rabbi confirms his worst fear. Yep, that's a golem, and the only person who can stop it is the woman you hurt. So in this wild turn of events, the chief gets all the villagers together, publicly confesses to this horrible, unspeakable crime, and literally throws himself at the mother's feet, begging her to stop the monster. So the mother got her revenge, right? The man who ruined her life is completely broken. But she pretty quickly realizes that this is far from over. The tool she created for her vengeance is now just a mindless killing machine. It's a monster, and she has absolutely no control over it anymore.
She's frantically digging through that old magic book, desperately looking for a way to reverse it, to undo what she did. But there's nothing. The book tells you how to create this thing, but not how to destroy it. And now the golem has started attacking people in her own community, killing her innocent neighbors. Her weapon of revenge has basically become a plague on everyone.
So, totally desperate, she goes to find some religious experts for help, and they basically lay out this impossible choice for her. See, she's actually grown to love this thing, this ghost of her son. The trauma that created the golem has somehow twisted into this weird, protective love for the monster. Killing it would feel like losing her child all over again. But if she lets it live, it's a death sentence for everyone in the village, including her.
An advisor gives her the only possible solution, and it is just terrifyingly personal. The golem wants her love, her affection, and she has to use that love as a weapon. She has to get close enough to literally embrace the monster she made.
So, she waits. The next time the golem comes to her looking for that motherly comfort, she doesn't pull away. She forces herself to play the part. She draws it in for a hug, she strokes its head, and she leans in close, just like she's about to give it a kiss.
And then in this final, awful act of betrayal, she shoves 2 fingers into its mouth. She feels around for that little scroll of paper, the magic that is its entire life force, and she yanks it out with everything she has.
Its beautiful face just twists into something horrible, monstrous, and its voice, terrified, begs her, "Mother, don't kill me. I helped you." But she just rips the paper in half, and with one last terrible scream that echoes across the whole village, the creature just dissolves into nothing.
And just like that, the violence was over. The village was safe. But the mother, she was left completely alone, with a grief that was now twice as heavy. It's such a chilling story, right? A reminder that revenge is like a fire. It burns up everything, especially the person who starts it. And it leaves you with this really haunting question. When you use darkness to fight evil, does anyone really win?
You know, a trip to the beach, it's supposed to be relaxing, right? A peaceful escape. But for one group of friends in Bangladesh, it turned into an absolute nightmare, one they would never, ever forget. We're about to get into a terrifying first-hand account from a resort in Cox's Bazar. And let me tell you, this story will make you think twice about that quiet walk on the sand after dark. So that quote, that's from Moniruzzaman himself, the man at the very center of this whole thing. His words really set the stage for a story that completely blurs the line between a vacation and a haunting. All right, part 1, a trip to the coast. It all kicked off in 2022, just 4 friends looking to get away from the city for a little while. Seemed innocent enough. So they were smart about it. Or so they thought. They picked the off-season to book this isolated eco-resort near Inani Beach, and their goal was super simple. Just experience the real, raw beauty of the coast without all the usual tourist crowds. They wanted privacy, you know, a little bit of peace. But on their very first night, as they're just sitting there on the private beach, something weird happens. Out of literally nowhere, this powerful gust of scorching hot wind just blasts them. It felt completely unnatural, like opening an oven door, and then poof, it was gone as quickly as it came. And then, just a few moments later, the air fills with this overpowering stench of decay. I mean, like a huge animal had died right there. But they looked around, they searched everywhere, and found absolutely nothing. The smell was intense, you couldn't escape it, but there was no source. Yeah, they were pretty unsettled and decided to call it a night. Okay, so now we're at part 2, the creature on the beach. The next day was totally normal, but the real horror? Man, it was just waiting for the sun to go down. This is where the story takes a seriously terrifying turn. So, picture this. They've had a long day. They're all tired out. 3 of the friends, they head back to the room to crash. But one of them, Munir, he decides to stay out on the beach alone, just for a little bit longer. So Munir's walking along the sand and he decides he wants a cigarette. But, of course, he left his lighter back in the room. Then he spots this lone, skinny figure standing way off in the distance, just facing the ocean. Thinking it's just another guest, he calls out, "Hey, do you have a letter?" He calls out a second time, and this is when the figure slowly starts to turn around. And what Munir saw, it defied all logic. It wasn't the thin man he saw from behind. Not even close. It was something monstrous, just a grotesque, bloated parody of a human being. The creature's face was just wrong, unnaturally long. It had this thick white beard and mustache that completely covered where a mouth should have been. Its eyes were just 2 large, black, empty holes, and its body, its flesh was literally ripped away in places, showing patches of white bone underneath, with blood just slowly dripping down onto the sand. I mean, what do you even do when you see something like that? Something that shouldn't exist. Munir did the only thing his body could probably think to do. He let out one single piercing scream and then just collapsed, face down in the sand, out cold. All right, Section 3, The Haunting in Dhaka. You'd hope the nightmare would end there, right? His friends find him, they get the heck out of that resort. But no, the terror just packed its bags and followed Munir all the way back to his home in the city. And there was no break. No time to recover. Look at how fast this all went down. Day 1, the encounter. Day 2, they are out of there at first light. By day 3, he's back in what should be the safety of his own home in Dhaka. And that very night, it starts all over again. So at first, it was just in his head. The nightmares started. Night after night, the same horrible creature from the beach was chasing him, attacking him. But then, it crossed over. It came into his world. One night, he rolled over in his sleep and felt something in bed next to him, and in his own words, this is the moment the horror became absolutely, terrifyingly real. He opened his eyes, and there it was, the same grotesque thing from the beach, lying in bed right beside him. He screamed, flipped on the light, and it was gone. But it happened again and again. Okay, part 4, an expert's explanation. At this point, Munir's family is absolutely terrified, and they know they need a different kind of help. So they took him to see a religious cleric in his hometown of Rangpur to try and figure out what was going on. After hearing the entire crazy story, the cleric, he knew what it was. He gave it a name. He called it a Sagar Parj Jinn, which basically translates to a Jinn of the seashore, a very specific kind of supernatural being that's known to inhabit coastal areas. So the cleric laid out his whole theory. He figured the Jinn was probably feeding on some animal carcass that had washed ashore, and the friends accidentally disturbed its meal. That would explain the sudden heat and that horrible smell. Now, for whatever reason, the entity latched onto Munir specifically and followed him home. But the cleric offered a little bit of hope. This creature is tied to the ocean. It can't stay inland forever. It would have to go back. So the fix wasn't some big dramatic exorcism. It was more about building up a spiritual defense. The cleric gave him specific prayers and told him to be consistent with his religious practices. The whole idea was to build a kind of spiritual shield around Munir, to make him an unwelcoming place for the Jinn, until it was finally forced to go back where it came from. And you know what? It worked. All right, our final section, number 5, a warning for travelers. Munir's story is so much more than just a spooky campfire tale. It's really a stark warning for anyone who's drawn to those beautiful, isolated coastlines around the world. So what are we supposed to take away from all this? Well, the warnings are pretty dang clear. Avoid isolated, unlit beaches late at night. Definitely don't wander them alone. And remember, even being in a group didn't protect them from that first strange encounter. And maybe the most important lesson here is that your own personal faith, your spiritual practices, they can be a powerful shield, especially when you find yourself in a place you don't belong. Munir did eventually recover, but he has never gone back to Cox's Bazaar, and he says he never will. His story just leaves us with this lingering, really unsettling question. We all love the beauty of the ocean, right? But when the sun goes down and all the crowds are gone, what else is waiting by the shore at night?
True life account of a man named Abraham Khalil. He survived 2 terrifying events as a child that seemed to be linked by one single evil force. And let me tell you, this is more than just a scary story. It's like a peek into a hidden world that exists right alongside our own.
I mean, just think about that for a second. The person you trust the most in the world, your best friend, suddenly turns on you, wanting you dead. That is exactly where this story kicks off, twisting a simple childhood adventure into an absolute nightmare.
So let's go back about 20 years to a small village in rural Bangladesh. Ibrahim was just a little kid, 7 years old, and an only child. He and his best friend used to go out super early in the morning to do kid stuff, find fallen fruit. But this one morning, the plan was very, very different. And right away, we get the first clue that something is just off. As Ibrahim and his friend are walking through these dark fields, they spot 4 or 5 cows just grazing. But here's the thing, they weren't tied up, which was really weird for that time of night. Even stranger, the cows didn't even look up as the boys walked by. They were just still, almost unnaturally still.
So when they get to the date palm tree, the weirdness just ramps up. His friend, who was always the one who climbed, suddenly starts demanding that Ibrahim go up instead. He gets really aggressive about it, complaining that it's not fair he always does the hard work. Ibrahim, kind of feeling bad, just reluctantly agrees and starts to climb.
So Ibrahim is getting near the top of this tree, and he just happens to glance down. And what he sees, it's horrifying. His friend isn't just waiting for him, he's taking sharp, broken palm thorns and planting them all around the bottom of the tree, with the points sticking straight up. When Ibrahim yells down, "What are you doing?" his friend's reply confirms his absolute worst fears.
And then came this. The voice from below, the voice that sounded just like his best friend, made a promise so monstrous, it was crystal clear he wasn't talking to his friend anymore. This was something else entirely, something evil that was just wearing his friend's face. And Ibrahim was trapped, stuck in a tree with a predator waiting for him below.
And then the most unbelievable thing happens. Remember those silent, creepy cows from before? All of a sudden, they charge out of the darkness. They just start goring the creature that looks like his friend over and over again until it scrambles to its feet and just vanishes into the night. It was this sudden, violent, and completely unexpected rescue.
Ibrahim is frozen up in that tree, totally terrified and confused, and then he hears the impossible. One of the cows speaks to him in a clear human voice. It tells him he just escaped a great danger and offers him a ride to safety. In that one moment, he knew his rescuers were not ordinary animals at all.
Okay, so to really get what happened here, we need to talk about the Jinn. In Islamic folklore, these are beings made of smokeless fire that exist in a world parallel to ours, one we can't see. And just like people, they can be good or they can be evil. They're known to be able to change their shape and interact with our world in some really powerful and sometimes terrifying ways. So when Ibrahim's family, completely freaked out, takes him to a local religious scholar, the explanation they get is just chilling. The Jinn had targeted him for a very specific reason, because he was an only child. According to this belief, if a malevolent Jinn kills an only child, it gets a huge boost in its power. So you see, Ibrahim wasn't a random victim. He was a strategic target. After that nightmare at the tree, things actually went quiet for a few months. Winter ended, summer came around. You can imagine Ibrahim and his family probably started to think, maybe the danger had passed. But the thing that held this grudge, it wasn't done. It was just waiting for another shot. The second attempt happened during Badro, a hot summer month when these palm fruits get perfectly ripe and delicious. Ibrahim was at the local mosque for dawn prayers, but he's a kid. His mind was at least partly on getting a sweet treat. And then, all of a sudden, he hears this loud splash from the pond nearby, the unmistakable sound of a perfect fruit hitting the water. So of course he ditches his prayers and sprints outside. But here's the really creepy part. There were other kids in the mosque, and they'd be just as excited for a fruit as he was, but none of them moved. Not a single one seemed to have heard that splash. The sound, it was a trap laid out just for him. He sees the fruit floating there, so he wades into the pond to grab it, holding onto a tree root to keep his balance. That's when he feels a sudden push from behind. And then, this iron grip clamps onto his leg from under the water. Something was trying to drown him. He held onto that root for dear life, fighting against an attacker he couldn't even see. And just when he felt his strength giving out, a man appears from absolutely nowhere.
He yanks Ibrahim out of the water, gives him a bit of a scolding for being so reckless, and tells him to run straight home. He even promised he'd go talk to the mosque leader so Ibrahim wouldn't get in trouble. Exhausted and terrified, Ibrahim did exactly what the man said.
And this is where the second rescue gets undeniably supernatural. The next day, the mosque leader asks Ibrahim, "Hey, is your maternal uncle visiting?" He said the man who saved him looked exactly like his uncle. But here's the twist. Ibrahim's uncle wasn't anywhere near the town. The man Ibrahim saw was a total stranger. His guardian had appeared as two different people to two different witnesses, proving it was another benevolent being in disguise.
When you step back and look at the whole story, the symmetry is just incredible. You have two very distinct attacks by this predatory jinn, and you have two totally miraculous rescues by unseen protectors who show up at the last possible second. For every single threat, a guardian appeared.
So here's the big takeaway. Ibrahim's story is really about this incredible battle being fought in an unseen world. A malevolent jinn, hungry for power, made two very calculated attempts to end his life. And both times, what his family believes were good jinn stepped in to make sure he survived.
And that's what I want to leave you with. Ibrahim Khalil's account suggests a world where danger can be hiding in plain sight, disguised as something or someone familiar. But it also suggests that maybe, just maybe, we aren't facing those threats alone. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It comes from the village of Mulahat in Bangladesh, and it's the story of a young boy. A boy whose terrible, uncontrollable habit led him straight into a night of just unspeakable horror. An encounter that would, believe me, change him forever.
I mean, just think about it for a second. What if that one thing about yourself you just can't stop doing? What if that's the very thing that calls something terrible out of the darkness? Something that starts hunting you? Well, for one young man, this wasn't just some scary thought. It was real.
So, our story is all about a boy named Abdur Rahman. But, hardly anyone ever called him that. He was known around his village by a much more infamous name. A name he earned because of a really dangerous and painful habit.
You see, Abdur Rahman had this serious problem. Whenever he got angry, he would bite. And I mean, he'd bite anything. People, his teachers, even farm animals. Nothing was safe. It got so bad, he once bit a teacher so severely that he was actually expelled from school. His poor father was so ashamed he put him to work herding livestock, but yeah, even the animals weren't safe from his teeth. He basically became an outcast, and everyone just knew him as Datkata Rahman, or Rahman the Biter.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 2012. It's a bitterly cold January night. Now, because of his whole situation, Rahman really only has one friend, a boy named Sharaful, and on this particular night, these two hatch a pretty risky plan. Their goal sounds simple enough, but it was really dangerous. They wanted to sneak out and steal some fresh date palm sap. It's the sweet, delicious winter treat in that part of the world. Their plan was to have a late-night feast, cook it up into a sweet pudding called payesh, but there was one huge obstacle standing in their way. And this, right here, shows you just how big of a risk they were taking. The groves were protected by a guard named Nizam Gachi. Now, Nizam was legendary for being incredibly fierce and short-tempered. He had this reputation for mercilessly beating anyone he caught stealing his sap. Plenty of people had tried, and all of them had felt the sting of his cane. But for Rahman and Shariful, the sweet reward just seemed worth it. So, as the two boys sneak into the palm groves, the entire world is just blanketed in this cold, thick fog. You could barely see your hand in front of your face. It was the perfect cover for their little heist, right? But the fog, well, it was also hiding something else. And this is where the night takes an absolutely terrifying turn. To try and get the job done faster, they make a fateful decision. They split up. Rahman heads to a few trees, and Shariful heads to some others. The plan was to meet back up and pool their sweet treasure. But separating in that oppressive darkness, that was a catastrophic mistake. Rahman has just finished collecting sap from a couple of trees when the dead silence of the night is just shattered. A single, desperate scream cuts right through the fog. It's Shariful's voice, crying out, "Save me." And then nothing. Just absolute, chilling silence. Rahman panics, obviously, and he starts stumbling through the fog, calling out for his friend. And then suddenly, bam, he collides hard with something solid, something that feels like a tree trunk. It knocks him right to the ground. But when he scrambles back to his feet and looks around,
there's nothing there. Just empty, foggy space. And that feeling of pure fear and confusion really starts to sink in. And that is when he feels it. Something grabs his leg with this incredible strength and just yanks. Rahman is pulled clean off his feet and starts getting dragged across the cold, damp ground by a force he can't even see. He's kicking, he's fighting, but he can't break free. He's completely and utterly helpless. As he's being dragged, this horrifying, raspy voice hisses right next to his ear, saying, "Today I will take my revenge. I will taste the salt of your blood." And with that, he feels these sharp, needle-like teeth sink viciously right into the side of his neck. The pain was just excruciating. This unseen thing lifted him into the air and slammed him back down onto the ground again and again and again. Rahman's strength was gone. He was fading out. But his screams and Sharaful's before him, they hadn't gone unheard. An unlikely rescuer was on his way.
And who was it? It was Nizam Gachi, the guard himself. He'd heard all the screaming and came to investigate. But what he found wasn't just some thief he could beat. It was Abdur Rahman, lying there, broken and bleeding horribly from this gruesome wound on his neck. Nizam was terrified, but not of what did this. He was terrified of being blamed for it. He knew that everyone in the village would assume that he had beaten the boy for stealing.
But as Nizam moves in to help, that same terrifying voice booms out of the fog. It warns him directly, "Nizam Gashi, I have no quarrel with you. He is my food. Leave him and go. This is none of your business."
But despite that terrifying threat, Nizam refused to just abandon these boys. He used his cane to draw a big circle in the dirt all around them, and he started reciting protective prayers he knew. Just then, Sharaful, battered but somehow still alive, crawled out of the fog, and Nizam quickly pulled him inside the circle's safety. For the rest of the night, the three of them just huddled together as this entity roared in fury just beyond the line, completely unable to get in.
When dawn finally broke, the entity was gone. Villagers eventually found the three of them, and Rahman was rushed to get medical help. It was only later, after they talked to a local cleric, that the terrifying truth of what actually happened that night was finally revealed.
So the attacker, as the cleric explained, was not human at all. It was a jinni. And the attack, it wasn't random. It was deeply, deeply personal. It turns out weeks earlier, Rahman, in one of his fits of rage, had viciously bitten a small, beautiful calf for absolutely no reason. Well, that calf was the child of this powerful jinni. And that entity had been stalking Rahman ever since, just waiting for the perfect moment to get its revenge.
Now, this encounter left a permanent mark on Rahman, but probably not in the way you'd think. Yeah, the physical wounds healed, but the psychological shock of that night, it did something that years of punishment and shame never could. It fundamentally changed who he was.
From that day forward, Abdur Rahman never bit anyone or anything ever again. The rage was just gone. The compulsion had vanished. The boy everyone knew as Datkata Rahman was gone. And in his place was this calm, respectful, and normal young man. That terrifying ordeal had served as a brutal, but somehow permanent cure.
The story of Datkata Rahman is, without a doubt, a chilling tale of supernatural revenge. But it's also a story of this profound, if violent, transformation. And it really forces you to ask a strange question. Can absolute terror actually be a path to redemption?